All right, let's jump right in. We hear a lot about a company's big, shiny sustainability goals, right? But what about the risks that are hiding, like way down deep inside their supply chains? We're talking about the suppliers of their suppliers, and yeah, even their suppliers. That's the journey we're on today, moving from hidden risk to real, solid resilience.
Corporate ESG claims are only as strong as the weakest supplier in the ecosystem. I mean, let that sink in for a second. This isn't just some catchy business quote. It's a hard truth that is completely changing the game for how companies have to operate.
And that really gets us to our first big idea, the uncomfortable truth. See, the real story of a company's impact on the environment or its workers, it's not happening inside their flashy headquarters. Nope, it's happening way beyond their own walls.
And this is where you see the huge disconnect. A company can stand up and claim its operations are carbon neutral. Fantastic. But what if one of their key suppliers 2 steps down the line is just burning diesel generators 24/7? Or they can boast about their ethical labor policies, but somewhere in the chain there's forced labor happening in a garment workshop they don't even know exists. That is the hidden reality.
So where are these risks actually hiding out? Well, you've got to go to the source. We're talking about places like palm oil refineries, cobalt mines, those unregulated garment workshops, and the shipping yards that connect everything together. It's this incredibly complex web of subcontractors hiring other subcontractors where it's really, really easy for accountability to just vanish.
So, if this whole thing is a tangled mess, how in the world do you start to unravel it? Well, that leads us to a whole new way of thinking called multi-tier ecosystem mapping. It's all about learning to see beyond the suppliers you write checks to every month.
And what is that exactly? Well, simply put, it's the job of figuring out who your suppliers' suppliers are. It means mapping out the entire network, your Tier 2, your Tier 3, and even further out, to understand every single partner that has a hand in making your product.
Okay, let's break this down. Tier 1, that's easy. Those are your direct suppliers, the company that makes your boxes, for example. Tier 2 is their supplier, maybe the factory that makes the little plastic components for your product. And Tier 3, that's where it all begins. The farms, the mines, the source of the raw materials. The key thing to get is that a major risk can pop up at any one of these levels.
So you know you need this info, but how do you get it? I mean, you can't just call up your supplier's supplier and demand they open their books. This is where that old saying comes in. Carrot works better than stick. You have to give your partners a reason to share this stuff. We're talking incentives, like offering them longer contracts or better payment terms, not just smacking them with a bunch of compliance checklists and threats.
All right, so how do you actually do this? Well, you need a system. This is where a 4-layer plan comes in, a way to gather this whole universe of data without getting lost in the chaos.
Before you do anything, you have to decide what you're even looking for. This is about creating what's called a unified risk taxonomy. Now, that sounds complicated, but all it really means is you stop looking at environmental risks over here and social risks over there. You bring them all together into one single scoring model. And that's absolutely crucial because it stops you from getting tunnel vision. You don't want to be so focused on your carbon footprint that you totally miss a huge labor issue that could wreck your brand overnight.
Okay, once you know what you're looking for, it's time to gather the intel. This happens in 4 layers. You start with the basics. Layer 1, self-reporting. You send out standardized questionnaires to your suppliers, but you can't just stop there. So Layer 2, you add in public data. We're talking government sanctions lists, reports from NGOs, even major news events. Layer 3 is where you get smart, looking for transactional red flags, like weird offshore payments or sudden spikes in shipping from a high-risk port. And finally, Layer 4, you bring in the new tech, things like blockchain and IoT, to create a true digital paper trail. Put it all together, and suddenly you have a pretty complete picture.
Phew! Okay, so you've just collected a mountain of data. Now what? This is the most important part, turning all that raw intelligence into actual smart decisions. And what this does is fundamentally change how you buy things. You know, for decades, procurement has been about just 3 things: cost, quality, and delivery. This ESG mapping adds a critical 4th dimension: sustainability resilience. It's not just about, is it cheap anymore? Now it's about, can this supply chain survive a major shock? And here's a super simple way to see how this works in practice. A risk heat map like this is, frankly, a game changer. At first glance, you might look at your direct supplier, shipper D, and see that high corruption score. But look deeper. The real ticking time bomb, the one with an overall risk score of 85, is hiding 3 tiers down at mine B, which has high risks for both water stress and labor violations. A visual like this tells you exactly where your biggest problems are.
So with all this in mind, what's the biggest mistake people make when they start down this path?
It's thinking that this is a one-time project you can just check off a list. It is absolutely not. This has to be a living, breathing, ongoing process. Why? Because your supply chain isn't static. Companies merge, factories move, new subcontractors get hired all the time. Your map has to change right along with them.
And all of this is leading to something big, what we're calling the resilience revolution. This is not just a trend, folks. This is the future of how business is going to get done.
So what's the real payoff for all this hard work? I promise you, it's way more than just checking a compliance box. This is about protecting your brand from a scandal that could pop up out of nowhere. It's about preventing your entire production line from shutting down because a supplier you never even heard of just got hit with sanctions. This is about building a business that can actually withstand shocks, letting you lead the market instead of always just reacting to the latest crisis.
And that brings us to the biggest takeaway of all. We have got to stop thinking about sustainability as just a fluffy PR campaign or a slogan for a marketing brochure.
This kind of deep mapping does something incredibly powerful. It transforms sustainability from just a belief into hard evidence, from empty pledges into measurable performance, and most importantly, from a source of risk into a foundation of resilience. And that transformation might just be the single biggest competitive advantage any company can have.